Hello. Welcome back to Silk 201. Today we're going to be discussing language contact. So when languages come together, what happens? Here you have a sign. It's actually in a language called Talk-Pisan, which would be in English Talk Pigeon. So here you go. Look out. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it exactly right, but I'm trying. No gut stone ikam done. Okay, I don't know that. Turn on your headlights. Put them on headlight. Belong you. Pretty cool. I think it sounds awesome. So the first thing you want to think about, that I would suggest you think about when you explore language contact is look around you. How does it affect you? Even if it affects you with some minor detail. Here in Arizona, about 2 minutes from my house, there's a mall, and I live close to a Hispanic area, so I came upon this shoe store, chuteria. This is language contact because hería is an ending in Spanish for paper store, milk store, bookstore, whatever. You have the word and then you have hería, yeah? Papelería. So here's one, chuteria, and I think some prescriptivists would frown upon that because it's a mix of languages, and they don't like to mix languages for whatever reason, even though that's pretty much the nature of language. So I thought you might find that interesting. I also, one of my neighbors, like in front, had a yard sale and put up a sign that said, instead of yard sale, it says yarda sale. Yarda is actually like a Chicano way of saying yard, which some other Spanish speakers may not agree with that term because it's so close to English, but that is used around here. So those are a couple examples of language contact outside my front door. And think about it. Think about what you can find, yeah? So languages in contact, there are different levels of borrowing. It could be that you're borrowing words or that you're borrowing structures. So you're adopting from one language elements from another language, such as chuteria. Shoe, so the lexical stays the same in English, and the hería would be the morphological. And so lexical words or phrases, loan words. Taco, enchilada, casita, which sounds funny in English, right? So words, and then structural aspects, phonological, such as the word leisure. The je is really not a sound in English, but it became a sound in English, and that word is French. Morphological, such as alumni, alumnus. So the little part on the end of the word, the I, or the casita, ita, because casita is a word in English, but it comes from Spanish. And alumni is Latin, I think. So the ita or ito. And then syntactical word order. So if the noun comes first, the adjective, etc. Okay? All right. Borrowed words. So let's look a little bit closer at borrowed words, what we do borrow, tend to borrow, and what generally languages do not borrow. I don't know if you recognize Swiper from Dora, but anyway. So What is generally not borrowed? Core vocabulary, such as shoes, body parts, family relations. There's a whole theory behind that. And environment. So a lot of terms that will be more cultural to somebody are not borrowed. Then you have grammatical function words, such as prepositions, at, in, and then articles, the, a. Okay, you got that. Why do they not borrow these words? Well, the grammatical function, like, I would say that it's really not necessary, and it's part of the language. Usually syntax is, or these structural words, the structure is not changed unless the whole language is starting to redevelop. So here's some words that are borrowed, and I thought you'd find this interesting. Foods, cultural items, political terms. So in this sense, a cultural item is borrowed because there's really no way to say it in the other language, right? So here we have calcs, also loan translations, phrases, expressions. So here we go. We have algebra. I got to get a little closer so I can see it. From Arabic, algebra, the AL words, and that also goes into other languages as well. Those words, alfombra, almohada in Spanish, etc. Chinese, feng shui. You know what that is. Yin yang. We don't really have that concept in English, so we just use the word and hope we're pronouncing it somewhat correctly, right? French, we have a lot of borrowed words: sabotage, fiancé, resume, etc. Cliché, right? Another one is, I just forgot it. It's right there. Déjà vu. Just kidding. Kindergarten, from German, poltergeist. And then Greek, telephone, encyclopedia. Italian, we have some that we use quite often. Opera, diva, right? Lingua franca, that's a pretty common one in linguistics, maybe not in your world. Pasta, of course, piano, espresso. Not espresso, but that's how we say it, a lot of us here. Japanese, tsunami, karaoke. Emoji. How many emojis you used this morning? Probably a couple. Banana, marmalade, from Portuguese. Not so common. So you see that the most common borrowings that English has right now are from French and Italian, and I would say here in Arizona, Spanish as well. You go down the street and you see the street signs, and they're half of them are in Spanish. Of course, this used to be Mexico. So languages in contact. This occurs when two or more languages or varieties interact, and there are different phenomena that are created, such as new languages, mixed languages, Creoles. You think about Louisiana, that was French and English coming together. The strata influence, which means which language is more prominent and carries more weight, which is valued more, really, which is dominant. So you have, over on this side, you have ad strato, which is equally prestigious, which doesn't really happen here in the U.S. very often. But I would say in European countries, pretty common, and a lot of other countries, it's common. countries where Arabic's spoken, other dialects. In Africa, they learn 6 or 7 languages easily. Okay, so that's adstratal. Then you have superstratum, which is the dominant language. So in the U.S. it would be English, and substratum, which is less dominant. So that would be, here in Arizona, would be Spanish. In other areas, it might be Chinese, Portuguese, Japanese, any others. So here in Arizona, it could be said that in certain areas, the Spanish language is more common, but it would still be substratum because it's less dominant. Yeah. Then you have language shift and borrowing, which I already talked to you about a little bit. So outcomes of language contact, language convergence. So 2 languages mutually become more alike at all levels, and that's more harmonious, I would say. And so both languages perhaps are given the same amount of value, and they just converge and both help to form another variety of the language. And then language shift, that's after long-term contact. So if you see the migrant minorities slide here, you can see that sometimes the reason that there's a language shift is job, education, business. So I need to learn this language so that I can make money, right? Or I need to learn this language so I can talk to the owner of the store because I need to buy something, yeah? And then language shift is expected after there's pressure from the host society. I think that's pretty obvious what that means, right? So outcomes can be language convergence, language shift, or language death, which is sad, but at the same time is a natural part of evolution. Okay. So let's think for a couple minutes about what we've talked about. What kind of language contact have you seen? I've seen the chuteria, I've seen yarda sale. Can you think of something that you've seen, or probably today or tomorrow when you go out, you're going to realize, oh, you're going to recognize something, and then you'll probably curse me because it'll keep coming up, right? It's kind of like for women when they're pregnant, and then when they go out, all they see are pregnant women. Like, there aren't as many pregnant women as there were before. Yeah, you just probably didn't notice it. Okay. So think about that. This is a loaded question. Is it wrong for people to speak that way? My personal opinion, both as a linguist and just as with the value system that I have and the thoughts that I have on the subject, are it's not wrong. I think it's natural. That's what happens. And I love to see the patterns. So I would say that if you're right beside somebody else and you want to be able to communicate with that person, you start communication, however that might be. If that person doesn't speak the same language as you, vice versa, then you try to figure out a way to communicate, right? And that's a way to communicate. Is it a wrong way to communicate? Well, I would say that it depends on what register you are trying to get to. So there's a register over here, which is high school students. So there's my daughter, Susie. She's 15. They have this way that they talk, and these terms that they use, and the private jokes, personal jokes about vines that they watch, and I don't know. Okay, that register. We got the third grade register that Layla has. However, she tries to be part of the 15-year-old group, so she adopts some of their language, some of their terminology, some of the way that they speak, the tonal, which we'll get into, or intonation, which we'll get into next time with suprasegmental. So, is that wrong? That would be very similar to if somebody in New York wants to speak Dominican Spanish or Puerto Rican Spanish, has their own little niche in the city, and the English speakers want to communicate with them, or they want to communicate with English speakers, and then it comes together. So why is that wrong? Just something to think about. And one more. Why does it matter? So what? So what? Why are we talking about this? What do you think? You think it's important? You think you use language every day? Till next time. Ciao.